And I'm going to tell you how we got Westchester back on the winning path again by cutting the tax levy more than any other county in the state, how we lowered spending more than any county in the state, and how we consolidated governments and initiated bold reforms, all while working in a bipartisan way to better protect those in need.
Rob Astorino touting his experience and successes as the county executive in Westchester County as he threw his hat into the gubernatorial ring today, which begs a couple of questions. What has been the impact of Astorino's tenure as Westchester executive? And what can we learn from his relationships in White Plains that would provide some insight on how Astorino might govern if he's elected governor? For that, we're happy to bring in Catherine Borgia. She is the Democratic Majority Leader of the Westchester County Board of Legislators. Rob Astorino is a Republican. You do the math. And Madam Majority Leader, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Yeah, if Rob Astorino wins the governor's race, he's guaranteed locked to have to deal with the Democratic Assembly, maybe a Democratic Senate as well. How has he been at crossing the aisle in Westchester County?
You know, the interesting thing about the way he's run, I have only been on the board for the past 2 years, but I did have some interactions with him when I was the town supervisor in the town of Ossining. He doesn't really interact with the Board of Legislators too much, and as a former assembly staffer, I have to say that if the improbable were to happen, I think that would be a big challenge for him, dealing with the way that the Albany machines run. I do think that that takes a certain amount of skill that our current governor has actually brought to the table, has shown in his long political career. He has learned how to do that in a way that's been pretty effective, I think.
Would you consider his style more confrontational when it comes to dealing with Democrats in the...
No, I actually wouldn't call him confrontational. I think that the notion that he is a good communicator and has a certain amount of personal charm is in fact correct. I think that he is more not interested in government in the way that the Democrats on the board have been interested in the actual governing of Westchester County. He is very, very good at speaking sound bites. I thought that the video was actually pretty masterful. But when it comes to actually doing the work of government, he's had a little bit more of, I would say, a spotty track record.
I just want to go through some of the claims that he made about his time in Westchester in the video today and ask you and Phil, who would be the best versed at this. Westchester on a winning path, cut the tax levy most of anywhere in New York State. Did he do that?
Well, it's an interesting thing that you mentioned that. He presented, when he came into office, he said he was going to cut taxes 20%. That was sort of an unrealistic expectation. I think most people know that 20% is a heavy lift, considering all the things that county government is responsible for. He sent down a budget that actually cut the tax levy 1%. The county board works on the budget. It's a mutual, first the county executive presents it, and then the board has a crack at it. And the county board at the time actually increased the levy to 2%. He vetoed that particular budget, and then the county board had to override his veto. So it's an interesting thing that he would claim property tax, that he would claim that he's a property tax cutter and look to that year when it was actually the act of the legislature that made that big tax cut, the larger tax cut.
Okay, and Phil, if you have any insight on any of this, feel free to jump in.
We've pretty much kept a flat tax levy, I would say, in subsequent years.
I was just going to say that, you know, let's face it, a lot of the talk about taxes and on the county level is symbolic. I mean, it's, you know, and he's the first one to say that, you know, 85% of your property tax bill is made up of school and local taxes. 15% is this sort of discretionary amount that the county board and the county executive have. Pretty much, it's 15 to 17%.
Even within the county tax, quite a bit of it is mandated tax, is mandated cost. So we really don't have a lot of discretionary income. That's correct.
And so, what does the county do? Well, it does things like provides parks, you know, and those kinds of things. So a lot of the things that he's cut, you know, are these sort of, you know, spot news, you know, little something here, something there, you know, maybe you know, close a pool, you know, at the Sprain Bark Pool, those kinds of things. And
bus routes and things like that.
Yeah, but there's really, as Catherine says, there's not a lot you can.
Sorry.
I was just going to say that a lot of people think that he controls or that the county controls all the taxes. They don't.
Well, let me just get to two other things that he mentioned, and I just want to fact check them as best I can. Consolidated the county government, or consolidated government, and 30,000 jobs among the lowest unemployment rates in the state. I think I know that Westchester had one of the lower unemployment rates in the state even before he was in office, but the 30,000 jobs in the consolidating government, would you Do you concur?
Well, that's an interesting question for me, because one of the consolidations that the county executive talks the most about is actually, I was on the other side of that deal, where in the town of Ossining, we approached the county and said we can no longer afford to maintain our own police department because of the high fixed cost of maintaining a pretty small 18-member police department. And that took a lot of wrangling to get the county to agree, both the county executive but also the legislature, because it was a new way of doing business. That was something that was brought from the grassroots level, from the town level. It was inspired by a Council of Governments meeting where there was a sort of broad mandate thrown out to say, how can we work together? But that was something that actually happened from the grassroots level up, which is how a lot of consolidation happens. It really has to happen at the ground, because if you don't have the support of your people, it can't move forward.
You know, that's the amazing thing about Westchester. You know, if you really want to cut taxes in this county, you consolidate all of the police departments.
Yeah. I'm in favor of that personally.
That's how you do it. I mean, you know, you talk about political will. That's never going to happen. I mean, you could basically divide this county into 4 quadrants for public safety and education, and you would slash taxes like you never could believe.
Well, we found that the high fixed cost of running some of these smaller agencies that sort of grew up in Westchester. Nobody planned it that way; it just sort of grew up that way, and we found that was where the best bang for your buck really did happen.
But I want to bring in the entire table at this point. Even if, you know, the effort to consolidate some government services came from the ground up, or even if he had already inherited one of the lower unemployment rates in the state, doesn't he still get to claim at least political credit for those?
Well, don't forget, what he inherited for unemployment and the budget at this point, and taxes you're talking about right now, also was during one of our big recession issues too at this point. So what it was isn't what was going to stay. And what you're talking about now too is over the past 4 years, he's had budgets that have stayed flat and have not increased, versus Andrew Cuomo's budgets that have continued to increase over the years. So Andrew's trying to say, I'm getting under control. Rob has actually leveled it off, working with the Democrats, working across the aisle, working with you to, in your case in the town of Ossining, I grew up in Briarcliff, to consolidate. You guys, I think you said you saved $500,000 by doing that in the first year.
The first year, and then $1 million subsequent years. I think
you sound like a Republican, by the way. Cutting taxes, consolidating. This is great.
Well, let me tell you, I'm for smart government, because I think we need to save money where we can so that we can spend money where we want to. I mean, that is what I believe.
Worked for Sandy Gale historically too, so we both got some of the background.
I think he deserves some credit for the campaign he ran in 2009, which was a sort of it was sort of raising the issue of, you know, spending is getting out of control. There are things that have to be looked at, like contributions to health care and that kind of things for the county employees and things like that. That wasn't really being talked about, you know, not in Westchester.
Well, I think though that's really something that happened as a cultural result of the recession.
The guy he knocked off, Andy Spano, was the quintessential fat, dumb, and happy guy who was running for a 4th term.
Under Andy Spano, spending continued
Fourth
to rise.
terms are hard.
That's correct.
Spending under Andy Spano, before you were in the legislature, continued to rise. And it was $1.8 million in 2010. Since Rob's been there, it's 1.74 this year, which means over 4 years you've actually had a decline. In the rest of the world, government spending goes up, except in Westchester County.
One of the problems with that, though, I mean, that is a goal, and he has met that goal. But one of the problems is that what happens when you cut spending in that way without doing it in a way that is looking at what your comprehensive needs are, is that things fall by the wayside. We have real infrastructure problems in Westchester County, some of which are the result of not having done routine maintenance over the past several years.
We're gonna take a quick break here just for timing. We're gonna continue this conversation after a short break. More RFL after this. Stay with us.